Hello, Dr. James Bogash, expert in health and longevity, and today we're going to talk about allergic rhinitis, or that common, what most people just refer to as allergies, but it's that irritation of the sinuses that leads to the dripping and general overall miserable time, especially during times of the year when certain pollens and that are elevated. Before we get into this and how fish was or was not helpful, make sure you like this video, share it with somebody you think needs the information, and subscribe to the channel. So this was a study looking at multiple studies on whether or not seafood, so fish and then other like prawns, clams, oysters, had an impact on allergic rhinitis. And the reality is that fish intake had a huge impact, but depending upon the type of fish, it either contributed to or prevented or lowered the risk for it. So before we talk about that, before we get into the data, we need to talk about how they differentiated blue from white fish. Now, your blue fish generally is considered, it's not blue, but it's blue fish in that it generally has a higher, usually 5% or more of the weight of the fish is fat. Now, think of things like tuna, mackerel, herring, those things that are generally higher in fat. We've got sardines, anchovies, everybody's favorite on there. But those are generally considered blue fish. The challenge with tuna is that we have, there's different quality. There's fresh tuna, there is canned tuna, there's chunk light, there is albacore, there is canned tuna in oil. All of these things can play a role. And we found in this study that it was important that tuna maybe isn't as healthy as we think it is. Especially, let's clarify that at potential, it's a good protein source, but if you're eating albacore, which I generally tell people to avoid because it's an older fish and probably has more heavy metal, and especially packaged in oil, that's going to be much different than having fresh tuna. So, white fish is fish that has lower than 5% content of fat and more protein in it than does the blue fish. So we think about things like, unfortunately, some of the ones I really like halibut is in there, cod, flounder, sole, tilapia, which I tell everybody to avoid because it's always farm raised and it's always crap. So if you're eating tilapia, you need to throw that stuff out. Pollock, all of those things are considered white fish and have a lower fat content. However, they can have a good protein content. But if we're talking about things like fried fish or overcooked fish, that can start to damage the proteins and lead to an inflammatory component. So, with that as background, what did they find when they looked at the risk of blue and white fish and allergic rhinitis? And they found that blue fish, not including tuna for the reasons I mentioned before, that having it at least one time per week lowered your risk of allergic rhinitis by 54%. Twice a week was a whopping 70% reduction. Like, that's a huge reduction. And it has everything to do with, again, we're looking at wild caught fish. We want a higher level of omega-3, lower level of omega-6s. Farmed fish generally have higher levels of omega-6. We've heard all our seed oils and all. It's all really about the ratio. So we want more omega-3, less omega-6s. And the wild-caught bluefish provide that, and in this particular study, we find that it has definitely has a lower risk of autoimmune allergies as a result of that. On the flip side, whitefish had a pretty massive, almost 550% increase for those people that were having it 3 times per week. And tuna, those who had it 3 times per week, had an 87% higher risk. So keep in mind it's a bluefish, but because of everything I listed, tuna isn't always eaten in the ideal form. So when they looked at they broke it down by certain fatty acids as well. There's a lot of moving parts in this study. But just the take-home message is that healthy fats have a big impact on autoimmune diseases, of which allergies are an autoimmune disease. So make sure that fish, particularly fatty fish, becomes a part of your, or wild-caught fatty fish, is a part of your overall lifestyle. It is definitely on the live longer and healthier list. So as always, I'll post a link to this particular study in the description. Make sure you like this video, share it with somebody you think needs the information, and subscribe to the channel.